the Movie Club Movies TMCMS podcast. Pring, pring, pick up. Pring, pring, pick up or delivery. TMCMS podcast. The Movie Club Movies. Blue Plate Special Sound Up. Tonight's feature.
TEQUILA SUNRISE, 1988-1989. A Warner Brothers. Mel Gibson, Michelle Pfeiffer, Kurt Russell, Raul Julia, Arliss Howard, JTWalsh, Gabriel Demon, Ann Magnuson, Ari Gross. I really don't care about the headlining star except for two of them. As Dale McCusack, and you're going to hear that name a lot, Michelle Pfeiffer, Joanne Valinari. Movie Club Movies queen. She is top of the mountain here. So many movies. Check out all the episodes. We highlighted her a few episodes ago, and at the same time, I am always dropping a title from her. I have so many. Married to the Mob has been something that's sort of recently been in the cycle, and I'm still on the fence. It's a good performance by everyone involved, but it kind of like is jarring, kind of gives me a headache visually, but you know, some art does that. You know, Bad Brains isn't necessarily a mellow Sunday morning, but I love a good Bad Brains record. Lieutenant Nick Frisha. Kurt Russell, another queen of TMCMS. No, just kidding. We know he is top of the mountain. Also, we covered Captain Ron. Classic 5-star. Give it up for Kurt Russell in this movie. Raul Julia, and maybe a 90s icon. I think a lot of conversations seem to just point him to that discussion. Addams Family, he's a knockout. Raul Julia we know from Addams Family, Street Fighter. He does The Rookie, and then his career starts to fade from health. This is a movie release for mainstream America, and his career is fizzling on the sea surface. Arliss Howard, we know from To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Julie Newmar, classic actress, I know from a movie called Streetwalkers. Arliss Howard is also in Jurassic Park, The Lost World. These are two of the longest titles in showbiz. A movie titled Plain Clothes, released before this, has a good VHS cover. However, I don't know much about it. The Sandlot was released after this. All Arliss Howard. JTWalsh we know from Hannah and Her Sisters, Tin Men, Good Morning Vietnam, The Big Picture, The Grifters, Misery, Russia House with Michelle Pfeiffer and Sean Connery, Backdraft, National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1, Red Rock West with Nicolas Cage and Dennis Hopper, Breakdown, on and on and on. He is in countless amount of movies. Ann Magnuson is from Desperately Seeking Susan, Tank Girl, Small Soldiers with Phil Hartman and Kristen Dunst. Ari Gross, Just One of the Guys, Minority Report, a usual bit player, but I think he went on to do more TV. I don't know for sure, but he's always been sort of in the background of things I've seen in those 80s and 90s. This one's written and directed by RobertTowne, who's been a major contributing part of a good handful of 80s, 90s blockbusters and continued faves. A lot of TMCMS sort of extended research and catalog stuff that I've always kind of had conversations with and suggested by. Movie is written and directed by RobertTowne, who has been a major contributing part of a good handful of 80s, 90s blockbusters and continued faves, including action-ready movies. Please feel free to follow ABZ Podcasts for their research and insight on him as a creator and unique Hollywood creature. The movie starts quietly, and you just have to pay attention to the details and make a puzzle of what your surroundings. Radio static. Why are we out here? Why is this the place? Because it looks like we're dealing dope. We hear Mel Gibson in a low tone mumble to his partner here, and he sounds like they may be moving their car, waiting for a meetup, most likely criminal. Mel sees some high beams from a car ahead, and we hear him surprisingly shout, "Lower your lights at least! Lower your lights, goddammit!" JC, we're just meeting here to be sure we're not being followed. He's got the cash. Let's wait and test it. How did I get here? Why not wait in the car? Our first actual frame of film is a shadowy silhouette of our two main characters here. Mel Gibson as Dale Makuzek and Irie Gross as Andy Leonard. The next shot is them walking into a stairwell, and for me, the music shifts to a standard stock movie music, and I'm thinking we're still tough guys, remaining tough for a handoff. The wash of the scene may be questionable. We are going along with these two. Yeah, it's like we're sort of in a tough, gritty scene, but then the music is like wah 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 wah, and it's like, what? Mac notices peanut shells outside as if a parked car had been eating and throwing them outside. And then he finds more on the steps as they take, walking up. The bad music continues as we enter a hotel apartment. Mel is checking things out. His character is reminding me of going through similar motions of Burt Reynolds' character in Heat. Mac also has a Louis Vuitton suitcase. Is there a bag of drugs? Is that the focus? And Matt fixes the toilet top to hide the bag. Mac fixes the toilet top to hide the bag. Maybe bag of drugs, but he's putting it inside that top of the toilet. Returns to the bed with the case. Knock at the door, and a tall blonde male body enters. He's a nobody, and behind him is Mr. Nick Fresha. And Andy seems amateur or lacks experience as Kurt Russell enters. A quick trade-off of alpha wits. Andy invited Mac, and he was not expected. Nick says he doesn't like new people, and Mac returns. With Andy, I think you may benefit from the same. He asked to leave. He takes a tinkle before he goes, and Kurt says he will join him. Nick and Mac must have some history here, and we see our combining of Hollywood action headliners, Kurt and Mel. Nick wants to know why Mac isn't retired. Mac is just there to help his attorney move coke paid to him. Mac was supposed to play lookout, so very similar to Bert in Heat and Carlito in Carlito's Way. Mac is smart and sensitive with setup. Nick and Mac out of the hotel. Later! Mac is tipped off not to return to the car, and Mac says doesn't expect any coke to be in the room. And they're just like, hey, I wouldn't trust this guy if I was you. And the other guy's saying, I wouldn't trust this guy if I was you. So then they join each other, so to say, in the bathroom. However, it's outside. Or sorry, Mel takes a leak, heads outside. Nothing suspicious about that. But Kurt joins him. Nothing suspicious about that. But I guess we're just reading into this. And again, welcome to the TMCMS movies, because I love these type of awkward moments. And you're just on the roller coaster ride of Hollywood stardom. Mac was supposed to play lookout. So very similar to Bert in Heat and Carlito in Carlito's Way. And what I can clarify to the audience out there, because it took me like a night to think about all this, because I don't know, maybe I've just been watching too many nice comedies, but the idea here is that Andy has been paid with coke, and he's like, look, I helped you out, Mac Makuzek. Come check things out while I pass this off to somebody. And what Makuzek knows is that Fresha is like with the police or what have you. I'm skipping my notes here, but I'm just explaining that Mukuzak is hip to who this dude is, and we're trying to all stay out of jail. This is the beginning story. So he's like, dude, I really just came here to help this dweeb who was paid this coke. So really, find out who paid him if you really want to, be busting people. I can't see him get busted. As dumb as he is my lawyer. We watch Mac escape the swarm of officers in patrol. He was hiding under an entrance awning. He has his best fugitive sequence, running across a freeway, sliding down side berms, falling into water, and using a payphone. Here it is. It's really great. I dislike this actor, but he's a physical actor and can run and jump, and he's doing some really smooth moves. It's not necessarily parkour, but I can liken it to Daniel Craig or William Shatner. Mac has called a restaurant. He mumbled to himself while running that it's 8:45. I am glad I was smart enough to put it together socially. He may have something planned. He uses a payphone to call a fine restaurant and talks to a pretty voice that is offering him, us, exposition dump. Exposition dump. He does have a reservation and continues to talk to them. And as we move along with our other characters, they continue to play back a recording of Mac talking on the phone. With the restaurant and our service associate here, she sounds like she's telling him the specials and maybe assisting him with what he usually orders. I do hear at one point a TEQUILA SUNRISE. Drink is on the menu. LOL. We also hear about a birthday, I think. I don't know if it's hers or Mac's. And this is like really subtle. I don't know if everybody's speakers is going to pick it up, but literally in the background, as we're seeing a couple other characters from, we move away from this hotel and then getaway scene. It's not as heightened as maybe other movies. We're just seeing, this guy kind of gets himself into trouble, but he has sort of a level head, and we still don't know what the phone call was really all about. Is that code for something? We don't know yet. I also want to mention that at a couple points, we will hear some kitchen chatter with sounds as if it's an Italian and I can't make out what is said. It's like something was dropped. I don't know. I can fill in a bit more in a couple scenes from now. He tough talks the payphone. You're the wobbliest. And off screen, falls into the water. Is that a haiku? Are we having fun here? Nick doesn't understand why so many have been here. Nick doesn't understand why so many have been there, and is told Nick authorized. Nick joins JTWalsh as Hal in a camper van, where there is ice and scotch readily available. Hal and another officer are surveillance, staking out. Maybe this is the origin of the peanuts. The phone conversation is playing, and it is hard to place it in the timeline, but possibly Mac is ordering at the table now, and Lieutenant Nick requests he hear it for himself, and then wants to go talk to Mac in person. What's good here? I missed dinner. Mac squirms and says, a little pasta, in a funny delivery. Mac has taken a drink of a creamy tequila sunrise. Rigatoni. How about another tequila sunrise? The service continues over the recording. So, from the phone call, and like I said, the characters we're following is Nick Fresha as he makes his way from the hotel to this like surveillance van that I don't know if it's necessarily parked at that same hotel anymore, but we can maybe fill in that this is the origin of the Peanuts, and that Nick, played by Kurt Russell, is just freely having scotch and soda or whatever, scotch on the ice, in this van. And now they've got Mac, played by Mel Gibson, still on recording at this restaurant. And I was just mentioning that you could hear kitchen chatter, but you're having to put all this together with the frames, and I felt like my sound was reasonably subtle and my screen reasonably darkened. I just feel like it's sort of a adult, gritty, maybe romantic-driven drama, crime drama. Kurt Russell as Lieutenant Nick Fresha meets Mac at the restaurant table. He repeats the rigatoni dish to Mac, and of course Mac is hip to where he would know that info. Kurt is spitting hot flame here, going toe-to-toe with Pacino, Mac. Heat between these two, but tension is playing also. Nick looks to his side and barks, "Dinner's over, Bart. Pay for the tab at the bar." You just had the lead of LA County Narcotics asking about you, and something about being white will show through in the papers, which is an awful race joke. Maybe about having a darkened criminal picture printed on the paper. Awful. But it's 1988. He made lieutenant last week. He's the head of LA County Narcotics. It will be announced next week. Mac growls back about picking up smoking again. Only kidding. He basically says, "You won't catch me for anything, and I'm not doing anything currently." "Don't embarrass me. I just got the title," is Nick's basic response. Mac insists he try the sandabs that just arrived at the table. The tension is at a palpable point. Nick takes a juicy bite and thinks they're terrific. They both eat away for a moment. What's sandabs? Has anybody ever had that before? I'm not a big seafood explorer. I've had a lot of different types of seafood, but I've never heard of sandabs. It almost sounds like, is it like scallions, like seasoned some way? I don't know. Is it like prawns seasoned in a certain way? Mel Gibson is loving them. Nick is like, "I just think something is going on." And Mac overreacts. "Don't stop being a detective just because there's no crime," Nick says with great brooding confidence. "Maybe there is something you don't want me to know about." The two are eye to eye at the table with a flower in the center between them. If Stallone had a hold of a line like that, it would have been in Tango and Cash, also starring Kurt Russell. Just as we see our handsome lead males go face to face between a lampshade and a dingy tabletop flower, our service assistant arrives to greet us and do the 5 and 5. 5 bites or 5 minutes check-in. "Mr. McCusack, there are 2 fish you hadn't tried, and they're excellent. Michelle Pfeiffer as maitre d' or host of a fine upscale restaurant, Joanne Valinare. When Nick asks about the fish, her response is, 'I thought I would surprise you.' Mac introduces Nick, and Joanna exits to other table fires. We hear some kitchen chatter here. Nick is keen to Mac versus Joanne attraction. Nick is keen to Mac v. Joanne attraction. So how about it, Nick says. Whatever you're doing, do it somewhere else, and don't embarrass me. Don't make me look bad. Max says I have an accounting problem. You know, Colombians don't know something about accounting. Yeah, they don't know how to count. Nick concludes, one more thing. Mac overreacts. One more bite of those sandabs? Here's our continued kitchen struggles, which is in the back of the house, at a kitchen table, and I don't necessarily know what's going on here. I have my notes here. I had you 2 drinks. A kitchen employee may have been given drinks by the bartender, and Joanne, with so many words, concludes, well, if we cannot fire a nephew of the owner, we can get rid of 1 bartender. And a joke maybe about additional cars to take comes up, and Joanna ushers our employee out. It's not necessarily a clear scene, but maybe it's like neighborly of Joanna. Nick is seen listening to the recording from last night where Joanne and Mac are talking. It's Joanne's birthday in this recording, and Arturo told Mac that info. Nick gets to tell his supervisor Hal and mentions that it seems Mac is up to nothing. Mac wants to continue pressing investigation. Hal, your friend is not going to get away with what he's getting away with for 15 years and just retire. We go into Hal's office where a tray of coffee or water has been delivered, and there are a couple officers also listening with Hal. Nick walks in and is putting more attitude together, seeing a flamboyant effort to frame Mac. Nick splashes Hal with the drinks and remains calm but demanding, shouting, you came into my office and you request me to put up false evidence in order to put away someone? He is pissed. Taking over my office, manufacturing evidence? I don't put weeds in my yard just so I can pull them. I just wanted to take a moment that within the struggle in this office, some of the other officers, but they're like, I don't know, office officers. One of the guys reminds me of a writer named Gary DeVore that during the O.J. Simpson and Princess Diana summer where the trouble with them was happening, that literally that same week, that same month, this writer went missing, and he had made a phone call from like the desert of Arizona on his way back to Los Angeles, and he never arrived, and his wife, partner, made the effort to put it out there that he was missing. And there is a great podcast that followed this up. I was a young person, and O.J. Simpson just took over the headlines for years. So I didn't necessarily know about this, but it had this familiar 90s feel to it. He's an interesting screenwriter. He wrote similar movies to RobertTowne. He would have been in the circle, maybe in some write-up rooms and stuff with some of the various writers of this time and of this ilk. And a podcast that came out that uncovered a lot of the facts and straightened out a very mysterious story. Gary DeVore, a podcast, did a good job covering his disappearance and friendships, as well as this recent article showcasing an incredible imagination for the action-packed thrillers. I'm going to give you the full title: Campside Media, an investigative podcast series, Witnessed, Fade to Black, Season 5. Gary DeVore is the screenwriter, and I'd like to just mention the detail I have on him is that he was known for having like a crooked pinky. It might have been on both hands, but this gentleman near the door as Kurt Russell charges in fits a similar description. However, he may be on the rounder side of Gary DeVore, but I don't know. I'm just putting it out there, and literally I've not talked to anybody about this. So, holler at me, podcast. I don't put weeds in my yard just so I can pull them. The tape is asking Mac about skiing, and Joanna and him must be talking on a personal call. Or is this at the table? This is in the office, on recording. And Nick walks out. He's had enough, giving the side eye to our handsless screenwriter, Gary DeVore, or is he Terrence Malick? We are now at an avocado packing warehouse. Mac is a grade A forklift driver. He's got certification and everything. His ship supervisor comes running out as he's driving the F-lift. And in the background, this avocado distribution center has got a great sign. The sign reads as Hydropore, Leaky Pipe Irrigation, the avocado grower's dream. There's a play on that for the TMCMS episode cover. Get a chance to check that out. Created by yours truly, JustinJustin. His shift supervisor, Greg, comes running out as he's working, driving the F-lift. He's got bills to pay. Maybe these people will kill him. They won't kill, just break his legs. As he passes an alleyway, a VW Jetta pulls up. Mac says, "Here's the real money, fiend." "Oh, I broke a nail, oh my." She is Mac's baby mama. Friend or foe, I don't know. She needs $10,000 for a car repair. And she talks about them having a child. And she talks about them having a child. And how she has been covering for him, saying he sells rubber hoses? Is this an avocado orchard equipment distributor? Everyone needs Mac. Now see the whole frame fill up with paperwork, reading as receipts from the DEA for $11,000, and there are a few of these. July of 1988, on and on and on and on someone's desktop. Hal steps into Nick's office and apologizes. Nick also apologizes. And Hal starts to list the altercations with Mac from their past. It sounded like they were either troublemakers together as younger men, or Nick brought in Mac several times. At one moment, Nick mentions he was in the ocean while Mac was busted for smoking a joint. So maybe they were selling cannabis on the Southern California beaches, or of course Mexico's coast. I don't know. Was Nick a surfer? Were they both surfing? It's really just mentioned without any more ad-lib. Origins of Point Break, or this is a few years after Point Break. Hal mentions Nick has excellent reputation as a cop and has moved out of Nick's offices. Hal says, "You can ask me about the case. I would like to be of some support." Nick asks, "Who is your snitch?" "I cannot tell you that." 22247. Mac is on a sunny payphone, talking Espanol to Jabba the Hutt's subtitles. 22247. Mac explains they are watching me, and with an aging streetwise voice, our phone call is explaining how successful criminals will usually find attention, and getting out of the game is no exception. People will want to take him out for being as good as he was. It goes by fast, and for me, there was a lot of personality here. I had a problem focusing on the quick subtitles. "Could you spot me, Seven? I haven't played ping pong in a long time." We see Nick almost take out a pedestrian, pulling up to our neighborhood sheriff's office, and the landscaping being taken care of by felons in jail suits, while we see one officer supervising. Nick walks into an interrogation of Joanne. So loose ends are tied up here with the kitchen drama at first hand. Because I think, like, in the same room is the young man that was drinking and driving from that small kitchen scene. Very subtle. I don't know how else to explain it. Andy is Mac's attorney. He is the brother of the owner, I think, and he is helping our kitchen staffer get his green card. Oh yeah, Andy from the very beginning is also there because he's an attorney, and he was the one in a DUI scenario. Sorry, and everybody I just mentioned is figuring out a DUI from the kitchen helper, and she threatened to fire the bartender. All of that is sort of wrapping up here. Hal is attempting to intimidate and threaten for more info she may know. Joanne is playing strong and sturdy as she has a major attorney herself and threatens to bring him in on these details. So Michelle Pfeiffer is firing up. Nick icebreakers this situation and handles himself like a gentleman lawman as Joanne passes around her own car to get in and thank Nick. She seems to come alive. While at the restaurant she seems lifeless, robotic, and reading lines. At this moment, she seems to warm up to Nick and wonders about his friendship with tequila, chugging, big tipper, Mac. Hal steps up and tries to elbow nudge Nick. "Why did you let the kitchen guy go?" "She's tough. She kicked your ass," Nick says to Hal outside their offices, and Joanne has driven away. Heavy 80s sax. as we see Mac's Porsche pull up. He's got a 2-story and the avocado. Arliss Howard is a roommate, and he has 2 girlfriends over. He has some really triggering dialogue with his pal Mac. They have some quick back and forth, including using ping pong keywords, which leads Bert, Axa, excuse me. Okay, well, I'm confused here. I just have excuse me Mac to ask a sign, Arliss, okay. Well, edit all that. Arliss, who is Greg Lindroff, 2 G's, 2 F's. We go right back to the restaurant. Greg is on a payphone. Joanne and Nick are dining. There is a great rain shot, and Greg mentions Caesar salad. Mac is showering. He says, go ahead, drop it off. I'll bet I'll never make it in there. Then we're back with beers again at Mac's. This time, no ladies. They have a comfy beanbag discussion about Carlos and getting into the game. We are in the middle of something. Greg is saying, he's at Orville and Wilbur's. You put a Cadillac's key down? Your Porsche keys down? I don't know where we're going with that. It's just, we're in the middle of an explanation. You've got a Rolex. He's got Timex. He's a cop. On the TV they are watching while getting drunk is a patrol cruiser in an LA neighborhood. Very of the time. 27 million street value. Mac asks, what street? Arliss slides this gem of a line. When are you going to let me in the game? And we end on Arliss rolling over in a cutting shot. What I'm saying to you is for your own benefit. Beer in hand, coke nose, dope nose. He's slurring over the idea that if Nick wasn't a cop, he would be a bad friend talking to a girl Mac is interested in, at a place he likes to go to. And Mac has a lot of materialism to back it up. Mac says he would have to bust his buns from his bed because he's going to sleep. And Arliss is doing some really interesting acting because this is really mumbly, and he's also like, they've had a few beers, and Arliss is just a deadbeat. He's like sort of rolling to talk to him, just like slouching, but sort of keeps rolling to a side as he continues to talk. So it's just, you don't always see people acting so slouched anymore, you know. I have a clip for Nick v. Joanne at their table as they dine together.
You were saying?
You're still suspicious of me and Mr. McKeezer.
Yeah.
You actually think we're in business together?
No.
I don't date the customers, Nick. Especially when they drive $50,000 cars and always paying cash.
And you'd heard about Mac.
Well, sooner or later you hear everything in a restaurant.
And he's never asked you out.
No. You're still suspicious.
If I was, what difference would it make? You'd talk me out of it.
That's not it.
No?
No. You're just suspicious of any woman who hasn't slept with you.
Joanne? That is a wildly off the wall sometimes.
What is it, Nick? You need some chapstick or some lip gloss or something? Because your lips keep getting stuck on your teeth. Or is that your idea of a smile?
That's my idea of a smile. Oh, man, you are. You're tough.
Oh, the swordfish. Nick and Joanne Valinari are dining together, and the camera is pulling us in by seeing the back of the house. So to say, they are at the last table left, the bar is emptied out, the bartender Arturo receives the keys from the valet stand, which he brings to the tables. We see some keys on the table in a scene, which is interesting, as we now see the 2 most glamorous table flies since the 1940s. Michelle Pfeiffer as Joanne and Nick, played by Kurt Russell, are magnetic. Dimly lit for atmosphere, the two are lit by the gold in their auras. We are getting a sneak peek into the conversation they are having at their table. Nick gets a chance to find out more about the mysterious, charming restaurant runner. He mentions that the way she answered Hal was like reading off a menu, and she thinks he's got an answer for everything. She follows up by calling him a bad boy, bad boy. He begins to stroke her hair or neck, and this is getting close. She asks him about his lighter, which is Redondo High School, and he makes a move to stay a little longer. With red eyes and closing to do, she says, "How about espresso?" Hot! And Nick has been smoking cigarettes this whole movie that are all long, I swear, and they kind of look comical, vaudevillian. She's in the bar area firing up the espresso. She notices that the envelope that had been passed to her now is on the counter, along with her espresso project, and it has been dripping rainwater, smearing some on the ink with her name. She goes to the wine cellar and attempts to move a barrel. Nick offers to help, and she explains the ceiling has a skylight window that allows to pool with water. And then what? Splash! Nick in his government salary suit are soaked. Michelle Pfeiffer, the actress, looks pleasantly satiated and giggles. It's a meet cute, and Nick kisses her. She embraces Nick. Smooth sax playing. We see nothing. We hear Greg's voice over and a framed photo of Mac in red trunks as a lifeguard. Next to David Duchovny and David Spade. Is this Andy or Nick? I'm just joking. It's just random people, but I'm calling out names. I'm just also want to describe what the picture looks like, and I don't know if they're trying to show that Andy or Nick, they were all buddies. None of that is for sure. Greg is saying it's not unnatural to part ways from your high school friends. There's no contract that you have to continue being friends with your high school friends. Okay, I did not know this was an element of the movie. We see next to the picture a bachelor bar setup of tequila, and we see Mac drinking a TEQUILA SUNRISE. A ice-filled pitcher. A cat is at the back door, it's raining, and he's smoking a crazy cigarette. Or it's a joint. Automatically friends for life. Greg. Like a tire, there's only so much wear until you're flat air. Okay, keep your shirt on. So Mel Gibson, Mac, is just chilling. It's a rainy day, and he's gone to fetch the cat at the door. But Greg, who's obviously, wouldn't you notice that this dude is like a user, a burnout, a louse? He must have done a lot of stuff, and sometimes when people are in jail, they've got buddies. I guess, is that what Greg, this roommate dude, is? Because he's just talking game to Mac when they hang out over voiceover, and we're getting these 1988 sunset casual. It's Nick's office, and he is picking it out like carpeting and what looks like wallpaper. A phone call he takes is from Joanne, as Hal comes to greet him for the day. A guy is repainting his door with his name and title. He mentions that this is a personal call, and I sensed some judgment coming from Hal. It's Joanne, and she asks if Nick ever works. Oh God. I'll die if I don't see you. How about checking out the competition with me this weekend so we can both keep working? Mac is at the bar. Where's Joanne? Arturo, an Italian ADR. She's taken a few days off. It's all like bad ADR. Mr. McCusack, your table is ready. He's got a fresh tequila sunrise at the bar. Nick is at breakfast, lunch patio joint with Joanne. This reminds me of a place in Soma, SF, on Brennan. In the back, you can get some like ceviche tacos. She holds the envelope with her smeared name on it. along with her mail from before when she was taking calls at the bar. Very funny detail I saw. I have the letter recorded. Okay, I want to read what's in the envelope. Dear Ms. Valinari, I am throwing a party June 10th, which I would very much like to have you cater. There will be approximately 60 guests to serve. An assortment of your pastas would be delightful. Thank you, Mr. Makuzak. Nick is back in his office. Some, I don't know, convicts are cleaning and preparing his office for some reason. This to me is maybe the same crew that was out on the lawn earlier. Is this a common practice? I don't know. Hal is critical, yet Nick assures him, I've been working. Mac's party is coming up at 56 guests. His party is coming up, 56 guests. He's got an appliance he is unboxing. Do you like cappuccinos? A beach walk with two guys. One guy has two G's in his name, but there are two guys. They can be heard over the radio. Greg and Mac discuss. His ex-wife, maybe? Because it's his kid's surprise birthday party, and we get a Latin theme, a feeling of Southwest, a magician, a bunch of kids, and Michelle Pfeiffer serving 4 sodas. If you check out just this scene, you will be really unsatisfied with this movie. This is like, again, a part of the charm of this gem, and it's not awkward, but it's just like, what is going on? There's so much great cinematography with this movie, and obviously there's a bright spot in the writing, but only in spots, because even scene to scene, the consistent charm of this movie remains to be seen. I mean, just Michelle Pfeiffer serving 4 sodas at a birthday party. Give me a break. No way. It's not Michelle Pfeiffer. It's Michelle Pfeiffer, okay? Get your sodas out of here. Makuzak's son goes on to voice Littlefoot in the Land Before Time animated movies. A magician cracks an egg. Mac, of course, notices undercovers all around the beach, and besides a barking dog, we get a mic bug near some colorful surfboards. And again, we go back to really cool shots, really great cinematography. Mac and Joanne are on the 2nd floor where his kitchen is, and he's giving her another envelope. This movie is all about the envelopes, by the way. This is probably payment for the catering. And there's a ping pong table set up, and he is thanking her. And she is quietly explaining why there is surveillance on his house today. And she tidily explains, she was explained to, that Mac is a drug dealer who started dealing again. Nick has told her this information, and she, with confidence, is hearing his reply. Wow, he called me a drug dealer and a liar? She looks sharp in this scene, and they have her dressed in a monotone khaki, but sleek, angular fits. And she has such sharp, beautiful features. When she's confident and striking, she's dynamic, versus a male lead here and his Mel as Mac. Blag. I don't blame you for telling Nick about the party. Thanks again. Behind her on the wall of his house is a vintagey-looking poster of ski equipment. Maybe a large advertisement? David Hockney-ish? David Hockney may have a piece behind him of a diver into a pool. But it also reminds me of Just the Way You Are, a past episode worth checking out. Michelle Pfeiffer as Joanne, she tells him about Nick, told her about the party. She didn't know it was for a child. She didn't know he had a child. In Nick's office the next day, he's yelling at Hal about getting the harbor patrol involved. It's a house. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't float away. I mean, there are 3 different activities going on with high heat. What's going on in Joanne's life? What's going on in Makusak's life? And what's going on in Nick's life? And we don't know, I don't know, enough info about singular all 3 or how all 3 are together. We've got a little bit of pepper going on how they all 3 are connected, but this movie is actually like a bit more dense as we keep going. And this movie continues to show its merit as a TMCMS selection, not only because I just mentioned a bunch, but because these scenes have some texture. Although bleak, maybe a basic set backdrop, it's just some office municipal functioning tables and chairs, a bare room filling up with incoming people, maybe perps. Shout out to Hooked on TJ Hooker podcast with Eric Siska and Ben Worcester. I think their jurisdiction is close by, being Los Santos and all. But this office is filling in with filing in perps that look like Californians and sex workers. So some tennis pros that got millionaires' kids into colleges, and denim skirted mall pop stars. However, I'm just overdoing it. It reminds me that a crowd at Joanne's busy restaurant looks much different, but it could be the same extra actors in fine dining dress clothes when we see Joanne at her restaurant for those scenes. Matt calls, and Nick meets up with Nick at a swing set playground at the beach, while Nick talks to Mac. Hal gets a call from his snitch. Mac gets off the beach payphone he is using and rolls around into his roommate Greg, who may have been selling him out at the nearest payphone. And how we hear him talk, in sync to what Hal is saying, Nick wants to know, we are 2 guys silhouetted, and ADR continues. So this is a really neat scene. However, it's a little strange because I'm writing my notes down that are really matching up with what's going on. That Mac does bump into his roommate Greg, shady ass Greg, after he's done talking. They're both talking on payphones 70 feet away from each other on the same Sunset road in their California neighborhood, which leads us into the segueing where he's talking to Nick on a playground swing with the sunrise in the background, which is gorgeous and it's perfectly silhouetted. So we are just seeing 2 Hollywood meatheads on swing set, and it is a handsome shot. But meanwhile, there is just these little pockets of, I don't know, dead end in the writing. I like Nick's swagger at his office, and like Pacino in Heat, he is balancing phone lines and walkie-talkies. He's walking upright like an alpha, and the puzzles are forming around him as tension and action seems to have been lifted here as we go on. So I think we can learn here that Mac is not going to give up Carlos because Carlos saved his life in a Mex prison when he went in for cannabis while Nick swam in the ocean, which this is just a continuing thesis. We haven't got much more info on that, and it's hard for me to read that because that is heartbreaking. We're dealing with this now. A lot of people's terms have been lifted with going into jail because of cannabis, and it breaks my heart because cannabis is so healthy for some people, and it really shouldn't have such harsh consequences, but it did early on, and we are starting to discuss better options. Consumers, positively living with it. I want to backtrack and say I don't feel like I've heard enough about Carlos, but Carlos, I think, is turning out that we do know he has been on the phone with Mac, and we just haven't seen him And I think I might have skipped that I believe Hal and Nick are starting to get a sniff of Carlos. There's a lot of puzzles being formed in the audience. I'm mentioning that it is a well-cut scene where you feel like this guy who's the center of everything, and he's fresh. He just got this position, so he's got energy for it, and he is running around managing phones and these walkie-talkies. I haven't seen a long cigarette in a while, but I'm sure in between these manic sessions, manning the phones, he's taking a break to smoke a long spliff or something. I don't know what's going on. At one point, he swam in the ocean while Mac got busted. Also, he wants to be left out of it, and Nick explains he didn't want Joanne to get hurt. Finding out on her own, I guess. Sometimes they call her Giovanna at the restaurant. But that's just, again, the sort of background talk we'll hear. Giovanna, Giovanna. Nick is tangled in this, trying to, I don't know, is he trying to trick Joanna from his dealings with Mac? Arturo, the bartender, or at least some sort of supervisor of the restaurant, he has an envelope of his gratuity from Cody's birthday party. That's Mac's son, the voice of Littlefoot in Land Before Time. He mentions it's a lot of money. She quickly knows the math and asks if there's $5,000 in the envelope. At Mac's son's birthday party, there are mumbled, schmudged, quick edits of a friend from, I don't know, the Harbor Patrol, lifeguarding, and not only is it this guy who may be old or young, and a guy who may be Jan Michael Vincent. We see this actor at a chair monitoring the radio at this Beach Harbor Patrol station later on, but I just want to make a note that, we don't even get his full story. So it's almost just like being at a graduation party and like your shady uncle is talking to shady people and no one ever introduces you to them, and then it's like you find out he's in jail or he's like an agent. I mean, sometimes it's just like, doesn't Greg seem shady? Well, I don't know. This dude talking to Mac at his son's birthday party, he also seems shady. But that's just my opinion. I'm probably steering us in circles. But let's keep going forward here, Justin. She heads to Mac's house, and HDTGM laughed about JLC in the movie Perfect, and Travolta driving from scene to scene. And this is one of those moments. She's driving back to Mac's, and Greg says he's at the competition. So it's weird that she said competition to Nick way earlier on their weekend off, and here she is again, only this time we see actual action of beachgoers and surfers out there on the waves. Our hero Mac is sitting alone. I'm not joking. No one else is sitting on this beach except for Mel Gibson, Mac Makuzek. He's looking straight away at his son surfing, and the sun is blazing. He must be getting cooked. I'm not joking. Take a look at this moment, and I would not even attempt to illustrate it. It does seem like there could be beachgoers, boardwalk hipsters, people that might be watching the competition at large. It does seem like that's happening well behind Mac, well behind this setup, and that Mac is chilling. He looks comfortable, but he is chilling, shirt off, alone on this. It's kind of beautiful beach. It's sand. It's definitely a spectator beach. But, if you get a chance to chill out, it wouldn't be the worst. But there's not a lot of people behind him. If there's anyone, they're well behind him. And Littlefoot's out there surfing, I guess. And it's also tough to gauge, but I don't know. I guess he's young enough to surf. But at some point I felt like his son was just like TV show toddler young, where it's like you wouldn't really see him most of the movie. But now it's like, is this dude like 15, 16 years old? No. He's like a 6-year-old California surfer kid, I guess. Joanna has shown up. She tosses the envelope his way and asks for discretion. His explanation is that he must have grabbed the envelope of $100 bills, and his ex-wife, must have grabbed the envelope of $50 bills. And that's He has a slight Australian twang in this one. So I'm clarifying what he said, but I would love to hear listeners' thoughts on what is said in this movie, because that's not a very clear line. First watch. Is this the callback to giving his ex-wife $10,000 because her Mercedes blew up with no oil? When we saw Mac working at Tom Hanks's The Avocado Dispensary from Splash, he has a terrible outburst supporting his son's safety, which the worst happens. The son's birthday boy, Cody, hits the pier, the rough, and Mac as Mitch runs off to the beach to rescue his son. Little Baywatch watch shot out there. We see then Mac carrying Cody in a towel back to their house, and Joanne is alongside, oddly. And these moments are oddly placed. Greg has 2 G's and those 2 girls over again, which why the hell not, except that they are not with us. Mac hides a candy bar into a tissue, and Cody says he feels like shit. Cody gets a neck brace and a farewell wish from Joanne Valinari. Would you like me to send over some angel hair pastas? This pasta is like straight out of a Hallmark movie. It's a magic healing pasta, and when sent over, its healing properties are known to cure most 6-year-old to 13-year-old ailments, whatever that may be. I'm twisted on Cody's age. LOL, when he gets surprised for his birthday, he looks 6 to 7, and there are small kids at his party, and then afterwards we see him surfing, and he's turned 19, LOL. That's incredible. I love that I'm catching up with my notes. Bad kid casting? I don't know. I'm second guessing my notes here. I don't know. It's whatever. He just needs to be an invisible kid. Oof. Injured sun surfing. Be well, Hobie. Cody has a photo of himself in the frame, in the movie frame, next to his head, maybe in case of loss of memory. Mac carries a tequila bottle and starts taking shots, and Joanne asks questions and wonders if he will stop drinking. Mac had mumbled some line about signing 50,000 Hebrew, and this again, how this movie has gone. There are several mumbled lines and ADR dropouts, not even GED. Greg had Mac's car, and there is a ping pong table nearby. Mac explains that Andy wanted Mac to show him how to sell it, and I think Greg has been pressing the same idea in his own mumbled lines. And I have 2 things here. Michelle Pfeiffer looks like a painting of beauty in the beach sunlit scenes, and the ADR is failing us. Mac has an Aussie accent dripping through, and Joanne has a crazy way of saying, yes, yes, Joanne says. On the cover of the episode, I was so stoked to draw this part of the movie out because I got it right in my notes. It's very painterly, the way that they're lighting her, and that she's been wardrobed really great. She's glowing, and also the sun is just beaming off of her, and she's in this, like, I don't know, like breakfast nook of Mac's house, and it's just catching a lot of sun, like a wall behind her, and like a ceiling fan or whatever. So check that out, or check out the scene. There's definitely stills of this out there. You know, just another photo-esque moment. I kind of need Mona Lisa's camera for some of these scenes. After asking about selling coke while raising a kid, they slowly meet-cute their mutual connection, Andy Leonard, their attorney, and the guy from the start of the movie. Mac wanted respectability through setting up a legit business through Andy. And I am wondering, was he hoping to also make the showcase that he stopped the drug transaction for personal moral high ground? Hugh Grant high ground? Hugh Hefner Highlander high ground? Because she asks, why would you need respectability through Andy? And Mac sincerely, much more sincerely than Nick, says, because I wanted to meet you, ask you out. Stallone, hey, bring back Nick. Thelma Louise is like, he knows. Dating is not a criminal act. I am late as hell. So I don't want to rush through these. There are really great scenes, and this is one of them, and it's just a silent way of giving us exposition on what we've been wanting to know, although we don't find out about Carlos or that ping pong table just yet. But what Joanne is talking about is, why is everybody lying, and why are you lying? Because I knew you genuinely before these other jokers got involved, and now you're getting into their lie, and they're lying about you. And he's like, it was all their thing. I was trying to be on the level with Andy, our shared attorney, and get my own business going, which most likely he has those steps going, because we kind of find out about that later on. And just think about the avocado distribution center he works at, because I'm even thinking that he was investing in that at some point. But what he's explaining to her in very few words on both of their ends is, I want to be with you, and I want you to know I'm a genuine person. Everything else is a lie, and you and I know Andy. And it's almost like, well, Andy is kind of a dirtball. Why do you know, why is all that? But he's also not a dirtball. But it's like, it seems like everybody's become a dirtball, and they met each other, and this is all sort of recent. So there is a clarity and a clearing up, and dating is not a criminal act. Here we go. Back at the restaurant, at the bar, Arturo holds steady. Joanne, in a stunning black dress and hair up look, comes to the server station and asks for a glass of champagne. You're never gonna guess what just happened. And it's so wild because we were at Max, like whatever, Cody's birthday party, or I'm sorry, we're skipping all over. They were at the surf competition, and now she is back managing and working her restaurant, dressed to the T's. You're never gonna guess what just happened. You got dressed up? Arturo's actual response is priceless and relatable. You gave back my tip.
You're never going to believe what has happened.
If it's bad news, Giovanna, I genuinely believe it.
I went to return Mr. McHugh's money.
You gave back my tip. I don't believe it. Good evening, Lieutenant.
You're early.
You're late.
Disappointed?
Yeah, what kept you?
You don't want to know. We're over here.
No, we're not.
Where do you suggest?
The wine cellar, where else?
Nick, come on, stop kidding around. I mean it. Oh, I have customers all over the place. I'll scream.
That'll be quite unnecessary, señorita.
Joanne Valinari, may I present Comandante Javier Escalante Potrero y Vega, the Mexican Federales.
A pleasure.
Okay, I want us to get ready because this log ride is heading toward the rapid waters, starting with her scene here, and she will continue through the maze of her restaurant setting, and there will be puzzle pieces scattered. Nick enters from behind. You're late. You're early. I'm JustinJustin. This is the Movie Club Movies podcast. Nick catches her off guard and says, oh ho, about the wine cellar, where I guess they did it? Although we only saw them kiss. Only, LOL. He takes her to the door. She is immaculately dressed, and her hair is done stylized. The door opens, and it's awkward. However, all the actors remain ice cool. It is a cellar door. Shout out to Drew Barrymore. She does say she has customers all over the place. Interesting similarity to a drug dealer. I want to thank Nick for not picking her up. We have been on a string of movies where women are picked up off their feet and taken to where the next scene takes place. She walks right in, and I will not introduce our next character. I will introduce our next actor by the name Mr. Raul Julia, star of Addams Family, and one memorable Arsenio Hall experience for me. He is the lead Mexican Federales and has a large table set up in the cellar here. I guess the rainwater dried up. Shout out to the back of the house employees that clean that slop up. LOL. Nick explains why Joanne is here, and I am confused again. Raul Julia mentions his explanation, and we go to Hal, and then out the door. The legitimacy of Joanne's restaurant can be seen next to the cellar door. There's a genuine cigarette dispenser with the knobs. Shout out to the ABZ podcast for those bits of authentic nostalgia. ABZ guys were mentioning how when you were a kid and you were waiting for a table at the restaurant, which was already a treat on itself, there would be sometimes these cigarette dispensers, which could be in many different places along your pathway as a kid, but definitely waiting in line, waiting for a table. This is 1988. They would be at a Italian restaurant in 1988, yes. And kids from 11 years old, Cody's age, would be like using that like as a arcade video game. Shout out to ABZ. I'm just paraphrasing, but so funny. Okay, I got off course just a little bit. I want to backtrack because also a scene where the guys are talking to each other with a silhouette sunset, and Joanne Valinari is cruising in her little red sports car, and it is so stellar. I just love it, and I sketched it for the episode cover. This scene is also interesting because it will segue her driving into what's just looks like right off the nuclear waste distribution center, and it's like probably not that, but it's just funny that we've got this really cool motivated drive in California roadway, and it just transitions us from that frame to a frame of a industrial building with smokestacks. Anyway, along with that, that was just a couple seconds before this and intermixed with the scenes happening. Terrible music is playing in a way that I think is supposed to seem like we are amped up, but we have not just yet. Joanne has to press palms with her judge friend, who, poor guy, has wild teeth, and it reminds me that there might be halitosis in Hollywood. Nino gets a green card, and Joanne visits her and Mac's lawyer, Andy Leonard. Again, the guy from the very beginning of the movie. He's at table 45. Raul Julia, his last name is Escalante, as if to say the movie is escalating. He wants to give Nick a present of gratitude, a gun. I think we get censorship here, or Hal is like a true blue Fed officer with Mormon background, because he says he's the guy that can ID Carlos, and he always delivers. Don't mess with him. You can mess with her anytime. The gun is being passed around. I'm sure it's real, however, it's decorative, in a box. Hal sits next to Escalante, and he talks about pedestrian strategy for a house Max stays in, and the security steps he has thought of. Good details. Did anyone think the angle and lighting had a Vince Vaughn effect on Escalante? Mac owns a boat. Mac has a parking stall on a street above his house, and Nick gets up saying he can help with one phone call. Nick is at the house phone. Joanne breezes past. Is she in the weeds ever at this restaurant? It's her restaurant, so I guess she's not. But does she ever have panic mode preparing or serving pasta? She's the boss. She asks, "Why are you not at your party?" Nick hangs up the phone. I don't want to nitpick, but did he make the call or not? He follows her to Arturo at the bar, and they are just staring. Oh, to be an actor. Nick says, "Is there something wrong?" I thought he owed me an explanation. Mac gave me his explanation. Do you want to hear it? Seems he has been engaged in his business for purely romantic reasons, while you, it seems, have been engaged in romance for purely business reasons, Joanne says to Nick. Is that a haiku? Nick, I'm not sure I understand that. Joanne, a little vague for you? You want to fuck your friend? Fuck him, not me. That's Michelle Pfeiffer as Joanne Valinari. That's a few syllables off, but I'll accept it's zen. Thank you. Oh my gosh. A rigatoni about Nick and Joanne. Two mannequins living in ELLE County. Oh yeah, life goes on. Cody's in a neck brace while Mac drinks on. We are halfway through the movie. Mac is a good guy, a good dad, and Cody is sitting in bed, drawing with crayons. Mac is headed out and mentions there's a sitter downstairs, babysitter. And I am wondering, is that who the two girls are? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Cody mentions Joanne Valinari, and he doesn't add any accent to it, and I think we should hear this one out. Doesn't she like you? Some people don't like a goddamn thing. And he has a point. Joanne's character is always shown at her job, so I can understand that she is in service mode. And we all get into that mode where we jump through hoops rather than show our own interests, because we're at work, or in her case, it's her own business. And as far as we know, she has not shared any true interests, with the camera, because I don't know everything that her and Mac have ever talked about or talked about in the margins of this movie. Maybe she likes champagne. We also see that Mac has a temper, so don't piss him off in real life. Anyway, these are just these sprinklings of things that we don't really have going on. Cody is confronting his father about his attraction to Joanne Valinari. And I would be saying, did we ever get that angel hair pasta? We see that Mac is clearing a boat, getting the cover off, and negotiating a high road stance up top of the boat, as it is, talking with Greg, 2 G's. He is wanting to know where some real shit is. Some shit will do. And they have an opportunity to make $500,000 from a guy who's doing life. Mac is hella sus and maintains his distance verbally. We see him bundle up a red thermos and a modest boombox. This is 88. I love this scene because it really shines. It really shows our two characters here that I've been shouting. I'm mentioning Mac is sus because he knows he's sus. He's like, dude, don't even talk to me about drugs or drug dealing. But this dude Greg is always talking about drugs and drug dealing, and just is always comparing Joanne Valinari to a drug dealer the way she runs her business. But that's my perspective. But we have hard data on screen that Greg, with 2 G's, is double sus. He gets more suspicious with the more G's in his name. He might be up to 3 G's by now. It's early. It may be before the evening crowd or lunch crowd. We don't know. This movie has the feeling of a Vegas Starbucks. It's got familiar working parts, and it's satisfying, but you don't know if you need coffee to wake up or continue with your day. And you may have lost $2,500 if you're Arturo, or both. And other service staff are sitting with her, almost brooding. I have not really described some of the crew. They are kind of menacing crew, and I wonder how much we will keep seeing them. The chef makes such good food, the judge pulled strings so as to not deport him, and that's how our green card storyline is tied up with Nino. Arturo looks like the man, and he makes a manly tug of his cigarette and heads to the side of the bar. It is a brooding sort of atmosphere. The lights are sort of dim, and Joanne and the rest of the crew are sort of sitting, I don't know, not in silence, but I think everybody's waiting for maybe some emotions to be expressed by someone like Joanne, who they're all most concerned about. She seems upset from the love triangle she almost firsthand has accumulated. However, I see these guys are pressing towards her. Every corner, all of her shifts are spent with a would-be lover. Is that the special? She's giving guys blue plates. Nick enters. The crew disperses after Joanne diffuses her situation with Pfeiffer essence. Nick apologizes and says he doesn't know her, and then recites a list of her romantic history, which I will not repeat here. Why is the LA County Lieutenant Narcotics looking up her dating history? Yuck. Anyways, she dated the artist who did the frescoes in the restaurant, which is amazing. And I thank you, Joanne, for loving an artist. Pfeiffer has these big eyes that are filling up with tears, and she makes you check your humanity as he asks, "Man, I just want to see you tonight. Will you?" See me? Witness him! Fuck that, Joanne. Ask with French stained glass windows for eyes, what else do you know about me, Nick? The phone goes off, which she begins mumbling. Should not be on a ring, because she is the one to turn it off every day. And I love that we get these moments of really running a restaurant. Not all of them, but this bacon bit is nice. And she says, "How did you get my number?" Dinner mints. Like, she is being emotional, very emotional, and the phone rings. And this is just an insight to a restaurant. Yeah, you would have that phone ringing because your baker in the morning is going to call, or the guy who brings the water or something at the early hours or before the lunch rush starts. But when she begins her business day, she's mumbling, and it's just great real life info that she's the one that would unplug the phone ringer. Here it is going off. It's an added annoyance, and she is, of course, annoyed with this man, Nick, who is in her restaurant, blowing up her spot, throwing her for a loop. Too many puzzles. Nick has a matchbook. He gets up to grab a matchbook near her and the phone. She sees this. Sus. She is a beautiful mess, and I'm guessing that Cody was on the phone. Nick leaves. She says we will have to play it by ear, a full spectrum of rock and roll on KRPCF, as Mac's red boat speeds by on the beachway, similar red to Kenny's Corvette. The radio DJ is saying that the lyrics to the last song were inspirational for girl watching. Oh Cal, so Cal, KRPCF. Joanne is heading to Mac's house, and she's getting into the back of her car. It looks like clothing. We are now overhearing, along with Joanne's actions, that Escalante, which is Raul Julia, is in the back of a down-and-out van from '88. Vanessa's van from Corvette Summer is much more kick-ass than these. Joanne has been watched cooking pasta and may be bringing clothes by to stay. This is all at Mac's house. Hal and Nick are at the office, and Hal says, "That's fancy pasta." They're all hearing this over the recording or radio. The narcotics team are radioing us some info about the money that will be dropped off at Mac's, and Carlos should pick it up later. It's like Greg's offer is going through, although Mac declined Greg, at least as many times as Greg has G's in his name. Nick is taking a stand. Joanne Valinari is not an informant, Hal. Hal is weaseling. Forget it. She can let herself in. She can let herself out. She has just waited tables, and one table happened to be Mac. I dislike Hal. If you call her or go anywhere near Mac's, I'll have you shot. The whole office heard it, even Gary DeVore. This movie has a good shot for shot, the time of day, and the glaze the time and creators are adding. It's got the sunglasses effect all over the beautiful actors and are set against sunny backdrops at times. Obviously, this is golden hour, but there's even more of like a paint stroke. I mean, the cinematographer really knows what they're doing. And it's just incredible shot for shot. And I'm obviously seeing and poking the holes as we go along. These offices, the camera explores corners and frames, including this moment with Kurt Russell peeking back in. Nick says, "You mean arrested, don't ya, Hal?" Mac's house. Radio exposition. A cat on top of trash cans. A selfie opportunity, just. Mac carries a small box for the trash, enters his house, through the kitchen, has raw chicken and a glass of wine. And Joanne is like brushing her hair in the bathroom. Mac checks in. Joanne has exposition, which is colloquial to Mac's household. LOL. Cody confessed to Joanne after she came over that he dismissed the sitter, Anne Marie. And at first, Joanne thought Mac left him alone. She made some food and called Cody's mom, who is the oil-free ex-wife that asked for $10,000. I mean, this movie backtracks worse than we do here at TMCMS, because my notes are really bringing up exactly what's going on in this movie, although it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because this was like over an hour ago. Where is this ex-wife, and what's going on with this $10,000? But there are just these little things that are being brought up, and it's like, oh, so his baby mama, Cody's mom, she's still she's got Mac in debt for 10 G's. I mean, and And Cody is like talking to Joanne like, you should be in my life. You know what I mean? It's, it's like we have not tied up any ends whatsoever. Joanne now is getting her coat on. I would have put together that she came over gleefully, took care of Cody with reasonable amount of frustration, made a meal, and started in on dinner pasta to talk with Mac. And here came Mac, and then she gets a moment, maybe she can freshen up before he comes over, and sees me at his house. But it seems that's just not the case. She offers him the glass of wine she poured and is explaining she was called at the restaurant and the number Cody found on Mac's bedstand, a magazine with advertisement of Arturo, Joanne, and Nino. Come dine with us. Eat some specialty pastas in LA. When was the last time you saw Nick Fresca? This morning. Oh, I didn't realize you were open for breakfast. Typical guy, not allowing her to the entirety of the communication or message. Been there. Been her? Okay, right about now I feel like Michelle Pfeiffer is above this material. Here is some of the next exchange. And skip my stupid inserts. No questions are asked by Mac, which is all offensive, all aggression, all machismo, and toxic. So you no longer want to connect with this person, Mac? Thanks for the bullshit, Slick, which is breakup music. It's over, Mac. Shut up. She's been called tough, then smooth, and now slick. So she has been battling in these relationships. Did you just call me slick? I hope the house she bought with this paycheck was really relaxing to live in, because I dislike selections of her dialogue. Okay, ask me anything, Mr. Mukuzak. Oh yeah, she's still just a professional. Could you believe the arc she's had? So Michelle Pfeiffer is reading down these lines of a character that's been called tough, then smooth, now slick, and I am hoping with her superstar paycheck for this movie that she got a house she is comfortably living in, because that chunk of interaction is just so silly and it doesn't hold up for the character I'm believing she is, because she's that great of an actress that scenes before have built such a structure to believe in. And here she is saying, okay, ask me anything, Mr. Mikusak. Like, whatever, just get out of there. I don't know. Mr. Mikusak, I am not good at undercover work. I don't know your first name. It's Dale. But don't call me that. Then don't call me Slick. What happened to Mac's red boat? Nick is looking at slides. At first, maybe this is Carlos. Then we see Greg and Mac in a slide or two. Nothing pops out for me. I'm sure the director is on the walkie-talkies with the additional chatter.
TMCMS podcast.
Mac is huffing a pipe to get gas or start a jacuzzi. What is about to happen? After such an argument, accusations? It's his business. It's not avocados. It's the pipes. Leaky pipe irrigation. And he is saying this pipe he sold 50,000 units recently. So again, we are sharing Mac is up to regular stuff, and he is pleasantly talking with Joanne, who truly, they both don't want to see each other well enough. And at this scene, it shows, with contrast, that Nick is souring the mix just by getting involved. A tequila sunrise with an olive in it? She's not leaving. They are watering the lawn. They are framed. Mac and Joanne are sitting against a camper trailer and what may be a wall of bougainvillea. It's all over the Pacific West Coast. However, I don't know if that is the flower Pfeiffer is sitting against. It's a very interesting patio setup. Max says no one wants me to quit as she observes he's legit. She quips. That's paranoid. He gets Aussie in his uncomfortableness and replies as if he's sensitive. She apologizes, which no one apologized for calling her slick, and she gets vulnerable, and Mac makes his move. They kiss and fall back on, I don't know what this is, a wooden beam over a mini pond. Mac, put your pipe away. Escalante is smoking as he hears Mac's leaky lemon game. I'm not joking. I love my notes sometimes. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, I mean, no one's apologizing to Joanne, who's just been called names. No one's like backtracking. I'm like, sorry for all this miscommunication. I'm so sorry Nick is being a dick. Or I'm so sorry. Well, I guess Nick is, he's the most talkative, but Mac is really not playing cleanup. I guess he's dealing with his family life. But he has got something going, like the pond or something in his patio. They're also chilling. It's very outdoor vibe and like patio vibe, although it's not like clearly, there's much more light in the day shots. At night it is pretty dark back there, and she's sitting up against flowers. It's very cool vibes back there. And I just don't feel a good vibe from them. And it's just funny that Nick is also trying to get involved. And it's just like, Joanna just is killing it at life. She should just go find like a Transformer car and get the fuck out of there. 1 hour and 14 minutes. The camera quiets down. We come in from the street up, maybe this patio Mac was on, and we see landscaping. And I think windows, we see flowers, and begin to see heels, and maybe discarded clothing, and steamy, almost pool-like surroundings. So I'm talking about the patio I just explained, and we're just kind of MTV cut into a kiss scene, and the camera is just taking us on a wild ride. And then, like a whale at Miami's SeaWorld, we see Max emerging, splashing topside, and Joanne has him around the shoulders like a moray eel. He is erectly standing in a small pool. There's no beam. She plunges up. They both have been under the water. She was swimming with earrings on. The sax is wailing. This is the biggest beat of the movie. Ha! She passionately walruses after him. The surveillance camper van is watching and getting hot. Are these jokes? All we see is steam from Mel Gibbs' littlest, smallest personal pool we ever did see, and we get a psychedelic heat from the reflection angle of the surface and Mac's body as Joanne gets into a crouching position. Are you for real? This is some special pasta. Shout out to Cody for inviting her over, right, Mac? Okay, so she's not leaving. It was miscommunication. We get one more splash, and poor Pfeiffer is holding on to Mac as he makes out with her all over this crummy little jacuzzi pond. I think this also looks too similar to his mobile home in Lethal Weapon 1. I gotta pause there for a moment. That is so classic. This is such a hit. I love this movie. I can't explain it to anybody any better. I hope you're following along, and please check out this movie. This is like a makeout scene of epic proportions. I don't think you see a lot. It is a little bit awkward, but the movie just, again, I'm just explaining that all these little pockets in this movie are just making me laugh. It's so great. I'm such a fan of Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm such a fan of Kurt Russell. And I've seen JTWalsh in so many movies. I'm on board for this movie, and I love a sunny West Coast movie. It's just TMCMS podcast. Now we get sax and electric guitar as we see their new life together through slides. It's like the intro to a TV show. It's got a Nash Bridges vibe. It's got Family Matters vibe. Nick is looking at his slides. We are seeing he's pissed. He didn't get the hot tub shots and is smoking a No. 2 pencil. A slide shows up with Joanne, Mac, and 2G's Greg at a table. We get a passion shot. Is this the OG modern, sophisticated sexual thriller? Hal slams his fist into a wall of photos. She may be staying over consecutive nights. I don't know. He says, leave. Get out of there. Clothes are drying, and the machine is making that sexual thump, 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 thump sound. This movie is endless with symbolism. That's symbolism, right? Nick has slides of Hal making a drop to 2 G's. Nick has smirk. Joanne and Mac have vanillas, ice cream. Put a pin in that for when we cover Into the Night, a movie released almost 4 years earlier. I believe you that you are out of that other business. His pager goes off. It's his service. He says he can go call. What the fuck? We now see that they are in the camper trailer. So he sleeps here? Or this is where he takes women? What? I sense a setup closing in. There's 30 minutes left in this movie. He walks into his main house and looks at the phone. From the stairwell behind him are the arms and gun of Raul Julia. And it's only horseplay. Quickly, the exposition links. Why didn't you call? They are covering the house. And Raul Julia is on 11. The U.S. federal government and the Mex feds, me, are covering your house, waiting for me to show up. I'm not joking. This is really happening. Are the bugs recording? He has 2 walkie-talkies, and he states, if I speak into the wrong one of these, it will cost us 15 or 50 years each. Wow, this is intriguing. Federales chirp in. Perspective is important now. We go to Hal's office, and here, Carlos has entered the house. Back to Mac's house as Carlos looks for leftovers. Raul Julia is running the alpha show here. You kept me waiting. I could see you had your hands full. You fucked for 4 hours like a champ. Okay, so the censor mode has been disabled. He improvises up the stairs. Joanne is left alone. We hear slapping. We see ping pong table tennis. Joanne is alarmed. She's downstairs. The phone rings. Mac answers. Who? Joanne is intersecting as Raul Julia sings. The phone was for Joanne. It was Arturo's wife. He had to go home for the night. Joanne has to close the restaurant. What a career choice. Carlos had said Mac needs to leave in less than 20 minutes and wants to finish a table tennis game. They both leave? Joanne parks in a parking garage. Her stall reads, Valinari's reserved. She's a tough, smooth, slick, splashed shard. Nick is there waiting. Mac is getting busted. I had Arturo call you because of your actions. You and Mac could be construed, and she's already getting into the car when Nick shouts. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I'm telling you, I can relate. Is the restaurant flooding with pissy water? So did Nick shut down the restaurant? Is Arturo closing without help? No more yelling. Nick continues. That you could get hurt. He takes her purse. We are at a moment in the Yo Pro rom-com where the lead has to start shutting down one rom choice over the other or communicate their priorities. And this is me criticizing the character of Joanne because I just keep mentioning that Makuzak we're seeing, kind of doing daily activities and that he has a life and a family, as chaotic or decaying as these things may be. We see him do that. And we're not really seeing Joanne do anything except for run a restaurant, which is a great interest and would have several facets that we might find interesting as audience. But along with that she could be someone who also enjoys landscaping or rodeo, and we're not seeing those things, nor do we need that, but we also don't know inner workings of her necessarily. It's just something that we're having to, I don't know, am I wrong to read into this character from what I get? And this is also in contrast with Michelle Pfeiffer as the talent she is. She's a magnet. She's hard to find boring. So just like Kurt Russell, it's like fill her character in. And even Kurt Russell is not necessarily a filled-in character, and I'm not highlighting that enough either. But I find it just more entertaining to highlight what's going on with Joanne Valinari She is a restaurant owner, and that's a great deal interesting to me, I guess. I'm a foodie. His trunk is already open. He takes her purse, and he's got guns, and he sizes up a couple. The gift from Carlos is the choice. So she has a loaded gun. Nick has a loaded trunk. Another officer is coming to contain her, while they bust Mac back at his place. Nick burns out and says, "Get inside." He's such a dick. Mac rolls up to a pier in his red boat. He mentions to the guys on the dock, "Don't smoke, there's a leak in the fuel." Interesting. We follow Joanne back to Mac's house. We know Carlos is there. She walks in. Greg and Carlos are processing, I don't know, money. He's got a popping on a paddle. A note to the viewer, too late in the game. But this is a quiet movie, and the music in the background is increasingly quiet until the recent love scene. But Raul Julia is loud, so watch your volumes on the later side of this viewing. Joanne introduces herself, and a goon is edged behind her. Carlos inspects her purse. He notices the gift gun. Greg says, "You gotta watch out for her," which is sad, and she's already asking where Makusak is, and I'm the one calling him Mac. Greg has his perspective, and he continues, "She friends with a cop." Okay, Greg is friends with the FBI and 2 girls. Mac is nuts about her, and he wouldn't see she's an informant. He wouldn't see that, man. Carlos is letting him air it out. Greg is playing it like he's a benefit for Mac and is getting squirrelish. Carlos presses about being busted and asks if he has answers to their questions. What'd you tell them when they busted you? And from my perspective, is with a movie like this, I am thinking I saw too much at the beginning, so I think I know what the characters know, and some of these characters seemed crude from the start. So 2G's story here, to me, is playing as if the audience knows all of this. He's squirming. I think he tries to get out the door, and Carlos is bracing him back. And it's like, real. The door is not going to open for him. Pfeiffer's face. Helicopters. Tequila AD on the back of a bus. Radio squawking. It's Nick on the way to I don't know where. There's a pier helicopter blaring. Greg has 2 gunshots, has died, and Nick thinks an officer shot him. He's asking someone, "Step forward." Hal states that we got here too late. The gunfire happened with Escalante's men, and Nick is checking out a popped bag of drugs. It smells like gas. Carlos has a load of drugs ruined because they were put in barrels of gasoline. He couldn't sell it, and Hal just paid $500,000 for it in the setup. Hal doesn't know some of this info. It's really coming together here, and basically Carlos, you would have to be an incredible writer to relay what the intricacies of what's going on here, because Carlos is playing both sides of the game. He is fooling those to thinking he is a federal agent, and at the same time he is some sort of real drug dealer or undercover drug dealer making deals in order for those who are maybe not as righteous will fall to the deals he's making, like Greg and like Nick's office mate Hal, or all these tangles. Basically what has happened is that Carlos was in the possession of drugs that were ruined because they were put in barrels and they went bad. He was looking for a fool to put it off. He did, and that was Greg, who was trying to earn some time, I think, for other offenses, and it's all just for bad drugs, and Greg is so stupid he gets himself shot at the door. Mac is onto this. This is all happening around Mac, and Mac has been denying all these fools this entire time, kind of along with Nick, who's been protecting Mac. He's just a dick with this lady friend of his, but at the same time, you can't really trust that your friend wouldn't just sell you out because he's got a real job versus your history of drug dealing. But we have yet to find out about, what was the real history with Nick, except that they must have just been in small time cannabis or whatever. All these sort of untied ends just sort of taper out, and we just gotta, kind of wrap it up with what we know of these personalities. Hal is getting the foolish end of all of this as Carlos has set him up. And get this, Nick asks, where is Escalante? Where's Carlos? Hal don't know. He said he was heading back to his boat. He sailed up here. Nick is smirking, nodding. He said he was going fishing for albacore on the way back. Nick nods again. I'm laughing. Thelma? He knows. Escalante is Carlos. Escalante is Carlos. Mac and Carlos have the munchies. They begin drinking. Carlos has a fatalistic view of Joanne and possibly anyone who is his friend. Quote unquote, you can't see me, but I'm quote unquote friend. Ultimatum, she dies or we stay here until I convince you. This is a climax to the movie. They are inside Carlos's boat. Carlos has fooled Hal and of course Nick because Hal took the deal. But Mac is there, not playing a fool, and he is literally wanting himself and his new life partner out of this bad life. And Carlos is like, dude, you always did this. I know who you are. You're here with me. And you can't have these friends, especially anyone who's ever talked to the police, and then you're going to get in bed with these people. No. And he is alphaing it, and they are getting drunk. And they seem like they were referencing an old friendship. So maybe Mac has always been dealing with him since the day they were surfing and got busted. It's getting scary because an ultimatum has been presented and Mac needs to take it, leave it, or die himself. Drinking is the way out, or the way in and out of this situation right now. He wants to share a thin joint and begin singing over a TV with bullfighting. Joanne has not been shown and then is shown. They are on a boat in a lounging room, and it feels like patches of this movie are pushed in or taped on to fit. Just like that, because she is now in this room. Raul Julia is working on a grand finale, has big reactions throughout the ending of this movie, and we are on a log ride, really moving right now. And remember, it's 1988 and there's romance. Mac is pretty drunk and passes out. When he gains his wits about him, I think he gets his hand on the gift gun and points at Carlos. He says, hold it. I know when he gets like this, he's serious. So Carlos is sort of like poking fun at his, I don't know, old drinking friend. And he's like, all right, drinking friend, all right. But no, he's serious. And comically, there is an edit where Mac and Carlos are facing one way and then flip as if we can't have bodies rotating towards the camera. So it's like a skip. I mean, it's just like two actors trying to maneuver on a very small stage because the camera is right next to them. I don't know. So it's like a skip and they switch sides. And we're supposed to believe that they're sort of roughhousing, to gain control over the situation. We dance step our way off Carlos's boat and onto Mac's red boat with Joanne following. Carlos's two goons did nothing. We boat our way out. We drop Carlos off and mention something about staying on a certain radio frequency. They've been on this red boat that Mac has. The engine stalls and we have some leaky pipes. Mac has the money down below the boat, which I couldn't imagine a person fits below this boat, and $500,000. And I don't know much about boats, but it's wild how much we see that this boat can hold. She sees the money. She holds the light for him, which seems to be difficult. Exchange, and after hearing why he has the money, she says, I love you, Mac. And ADR and bad editing are going at it here, and Mac is kind of pissed. Caution, trigger warning here. Joanne is saying she loves Mac, and Mac says he wants to slap her. And he swings, hitting like the door to below the boat. Wouldn't it be great if Joanne swung and hit Mel below the boat? Oh, for Poseidon's sake. Mac, love her back. Say you're wild about her. We get to where Nick is, and Joanne hangs out by a fence. They love each other. She would get married right now. And it's just so much turbulence. If you're returning from the trigger warning, Nick appears, and Mac wants to talk to him. I guess I don't know what's really going on here, and I'm showing my vulnerability by saying, I would not want to leave Joanne alone without me. Like, these parts we spent so much effort to be together, and then we separate to talk to our villain bros. Like, but I know that she's going to be okay, but it's just so wild. It's like, people are chasing you and holding her captive, and then you get free, and it's like, okay, wait over there by a fence that's just as shady as everything else. And it's like, let me go talk to our villains. It's like, no, I don't know, everybody together, you know, give her a baseball bat or something. Mac and Nick square off with guns. Nick is like, I caught you. Where are you going? And Mac is like, I gotta take care of this guy, so take care of her. Typical Mel Gibbs macho sacrifice. He heads out. I liked when they had the motor going. It had a good rumble, but they don't use it throughout the boat use. It's only like in this scene. It's just like a good sound effect right now. Hal and Nick have a squaring where Hal has a napkin on and is either eating chicken or donuts. A bit at one point, I thought I saw a dipping sauce, and Hal is pressing, taking out Mac through Carlos and Joanne. In a couple points, we have asked a lifeguard or harbor patrol to help us out. He was at Cody's B-Day party, and his voice is dubbed in like a small old man's voice, like a thin, boyish old man. And when he hears Mac's name, he's been asking for harbor support, and Nick turns the tables to ask for his help outside. They go together, and we know that maybe Mac has a fighting chance with friends somehow. Red Boat Rendezvous has picked up our operatic, asthmatic, doobie buddy Carlos. He starts in on drunk Mac about friendship is the one thing we can all choose. Please, I don't want to kill you. Cannabis is the future. Mac had to rig the boat to set fire, and we watched him do that for a long while, and he dumps too much gasoline in the water. What the fuck? He mentions, Carlos, I was going to blow you up. Here, let me switch it back. In reality, we're just watching a comedic left hand play around with a leaky tube irrigation setup. What kind of jokes are you giving me? Against her is an awkward gun struggle, and Mac bends the gun slowly towards our villain's BFF. Pow! They are both shot. Mac sacrifices his muffin top love handles, shoots one side off, but Carlos has a fatal wound and says his goodbye in passing. Is friendship for eternity or not? And I said it on an earlier scene, but Raul Julia on that scene is going 11 or 12. I mean, he is just blowing up. I couldn't highlight that soon enough. Hal shows up and shoots up the place, setting it off ablaze. Nick is there and covers Hal and allows Mac some time to scramble under the flame. Nick dressed sharp, and you know what his outfit reminds me of? Is Chris Pine's outfit in Don't Worry Darling. Really sharp and tortoiseshell sunglasses. He stands on the shore. He's called Joanne and told her to come to a certain pier point. And we see a bunch of people have a nice time at the beach. And then we see a boat. And Nick sees Joanne running through the sand. And we see her embrace with Mac in the seawater, just off the beach. And our friendly harbor lifeguard is telling us he's got some singes and scratches and is generally pissed off. Freeze frame on True Love. What about his kidney shot? And I think we need more of these meals at Joanne Valinari's restaurant to see the prior chemistry between Mac and Joanne. Arturo, did he get any gratuity on that kid's birthday party or not? This movie reminds me of a Michael Mann's Heat with De Niro and Pacino, Scarface, and some of Carlito's Way. Thanks to Arturo, Mac, Nick, Joanne, Hal, Carlos, Andy, and Greg. Please be kind. Please rewind.